Hi, Ben Lawless here for Matilda Education. I just wanted to give you a quick rundown on how we think that you can implement all of the stuff that's in the book once you've signed up to it. So that's what we're calling Good Holidays, so you don't have to spend all your holidays doing all kinds of planning and stuff. I'm going to show you all of the wonderful features that we offer with the book. So let's get stuck in. So the four things I'm going to talk about. So we're going to do this. We're going to show you two different versions of how you can implement the book. I'm going to show you what you could do if you used every single thing in the book, and I'm going to use the example of the history half. Danielle O'Leary, our geography author, is going to give you an example of how she would implement the geography half, and she's going to do it with a different scenario where you might not have as much time or you might be an out-of-field teacher. So hopefully if you see two completely different ways to use the book, you'll possibly fall somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to talk about four things: how you can use it for planning, what you can do at the start of the unit, what you can do during the unit, and what you can do at the end of the unit. Simple. So let's talk about planning. Got some nice Christmas themed gifts happening. So we've got a huge document for each chapter in the book called a work program, and in that work program is basically a giant has a lesson plan for every single one of the chapters. So each work program for each lesson has got a learning intention and success criteria. It's got an introduction activity. It's got, and this is hopefully quite unique, a different way that you could use the textbook, so rather than just reading it with your students. So a learning activity that's linked to the skill that is the focus for that lesson, a reflection activity, a homework suggestion, and some extension material. Nice. So you've got all of those ingredients for every single lesson for history. Also, every single lesson has got audio hits. So that's a tiny, not tiny, maybe between 2 and 10 minute audio description about ways that you could tackle the lesson, and an example of a lot of our Indigenous material is done by this academic here, Al Fricker. I do quite a few of them as well, so they can be used for the teacher to watch, to listen to 2 or 3 minutes worth of teaching ideas about that lesson. So we're giving you ideas in text format and audio format. So I'm going to give you an example of from Good Humanities 7. This is the history chapter, Ancient Greece, and this is an example of how I would use every single thing that is available to you. So just going to tell you what my assumptions are. Assuming that there's an 8-week term, now obviously there's a 10-week term, but we're assuming that you lose a couple of weeks to random swimming carnivals and stuff like that. That's kind of how we plan at my school. Assuming that you have 3 lessons a week on history. Assuming that you only look at 1 unit per term. We used to do more than that, but we've found the students get way more depth and building of skills if they do 1 unit for the whole term. And using all of the features, and that's them all there, and I'll go over them in a bit more detail. So I'm going to show you a map of what it would look like, and then I'm going to go into more detail about every feature. So, in this little graphic here, each box is 1 lesson, so 1 hour of class time. I would get them to do the skills pre-assessment first. I'd give out the My Learning Pathway, which is a little booklet where they can assess their own progress, get them to do the pre-test, and then we go into the actual spreads for the chapter itself. The little quizzes and worksheets are things that I would give them for homework. These so the little grey things are where there are worksheets for that. So there's a quiz for every single lesson, for every chapter, and there's 5 or 6 worksheets for the whole chapter. So these that's the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lessons there. I'm being remember, I'm using all the materials, so I'm giving them all of the worksheets and quizzes. I would like to give students every single one of those automatically scored online quizzes. It's something that should only take them 5 or 10 minutes, and it helps them to remember what you did in that lesson that day. It's really good for spaced repetition, sort of putting the material in front of the students lots of times. So going all the way through all of the different, now H3.5 there you'll see is a civics and citizenship, so that integrates civics and citizenship with the history material. So this is me, that's looking at every single one of them, so I've looked at every single spread in the whole thing, Then at the end I do the masterclass where the students get an opportunity to do some targeted skills activities. I would then do the capstone, and the capstone can be seen as a post-assessment. You can assess the capstone against the learning ladder, and you can see student growth by looking at how they went on the pre-assessment, which is in blue right here. So that's where you kind of get the circle here. So you get the pre-assessment, and then the actual learning, and then a post-assessment. And that capstone is going to take the students a few lessons. So I give them 1, 2, 3, 4 lessons for it. Then I would go away and as quickly as possible mark that. I like to spend a whole lesson giving feedback, so I'd spend a whole lesson on that. And then I do the skills post-test. So we've got two forms of pre and post-assessment. We've got a test, which is a skills test. So I'll give them, they do the exact same test before and after, and they can compare the improvement in their skills, so that helps them develop their growth mindset. And also from a qualitative point of view, they do the pre-assessment, which is an open-ended 2-page task which you can mark against the learning ladder, and then they do the qualitative post-assessment, which is the capstone, which can also be marked against the learning ladder. So let's just have a look at all of those features in a little bit more detail. So, oh, and look, you got one spare lesson, the joys. Right. So, at the start of the unit, hello Grinch, first thing I do would be to hand out the My Learning Pathway. Yeah, that's a little double-sided 4-page booklet where the students will assess their own progress. A really good idea. Marzano talks about getting students to assess, to measure their own progress and to record their own results. So they can record how many times they practice skills, they can record their pre and post-test results, they can record how they went on the automatically scored lesson-based quizzes as well. I would administer the skills pre-test. This is the exact same test they do at the end of the unit, and you can use that to generate an effect size. You can use it for students to see what areas they still need to improve on. Then we have the pre-assessment. This is a qualitative one. Here it is here. So it's just a 2-page one, little skills activity for them to show what they know already, what the quality of their skills are for those 5 historical skills. I would then explain the learning ladder. If your students have never been exposed to developmental rubrics like this before, I would explain how they work. Spend a bit of time just talking about what the words mean. And in this lesson, I'll probably spend a bit of time explaining how the book works as well. I wrote some narratives for the Year 7 and Year 8 books. I would probably I like to get them to sit on the mat just like they're in primary school, and I would read the narrative just as an intro to one of the first lessons. It's sort of a summary of the content for the whole chapter, but in a story format. We're lucky in history we can write narratives in a story format with a teenager as the main character, so that's quite fun. Then right at the start, the H 1.0 or 2.0 chapter has warm-up questions, so I would probably use them as class discussion questions just to get people's brains working, get the juices flowing there. So that's all the stuff that I would do at the start of the unit before I started doing any of the actual spreads within it. Then during the unit, hello Chevy Chase. During the unit, the main stuff would be the text itself and the questions, and there are 2 types of questions in the book. There's the show what you know questions here, and then there's the questions linked to the learning ladder. I would probably always give the lesson quizzes as homework, also the worksheets as homework, or maybe even give it to a CRT if I wasn't there, because it's often hard to give them stuff that's more trickier than that. So that's the main stuff that I'll be doing during the unit. At the end of the unit, I would get them to do the masterclass. That there is from, so students, after having answered questions throughout the chapter at the various steps, you could get the students to decide what step they should start on, or you could tell them themselves, those students start at step 2 and do all the stuff from step 2 and 3, and these students can maybe do 4 and 5 or whatever, depending on how you wanted to differentiate it there. Then there is a capstone project I mentioned. This is something I would probably give the students 4 lessons to work on. This capstone project, quite open-ended, and it can be assessed against the learning ladder just like that pre-assessment can. There we go. So that's the whole circle there. You got the pre-assessment of both skills as a test and their skills linked to the learning ladder, and then you do the teaching, and then at the end you do that same skills pre-test, and you also do this capstone. So that's where you do that post-test again. So let's summarize all of that, shall we? So this next slide showing you the exact same stuff I showed you with all the squares, but this is just in a line. So here's the 24 or 23 lessons. So all the pre-stuff, the pre-assessment, the written one, the skills pre-test. I'll get them to read the narrative. We do H3.0, so I'd teach them about the learning ladder, and we'd do some of those warm-up questions as a discussion. And then here's the actual meat of the chapter. All the chapter spreads in blue. You get all the content from those from all the lesson plans are in the work programs. For the teacher, you can listen to the audio hits where us subject matter experts give you a couple of tips about how we might approach that lesson. And then at the end, you have your masterclass where you get students to do differentiated skills tasks based on how they've been going in the bulk of the chapter. Do the capstone. Remember, the capstone links up with the skills pre-assessment. So number 1 and number 18 are the qualitative pre and posts. And then, yeah, so that takes 4 lessons, and then I'd give them a lesson on feedback, how they all went on capstone, and then the skills post-test. So the skills post-test links with number 2. So number 2 and number 23 are linked, and number 1 and number 18 to 22 are linked. So that's 2 ways that you can get to see how much the students have grown, how effective your teaching has been. And that is my example of how I would implement Good Humanities 7, the Ancient Greece chapter, assuming that you're using every single bit that you could. Thank you.